Hey everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in to My Sentiments Exactly podcast. My name is Kay, and I'm your host. Today's special guests are Don and Gina Grothoff. Don and Gina have a passion for helping parents overcome their child's behavior and anxiety issues without medication. Now more than ever, the world is dealing with ever-growing issues of anger, bullying, abuse, and anxiety, and parents are desperate for non-medical alternatives. Don and Gina are co-owners of Focused Healthy Family and Family OCD in Charlotte, North Carolina. They are here for parents wherever they are to bring peace to the home. Having 3 wonderful kids, 2 dogs, and 3 cats, they understand parents' situations and are ready to help. Hope you enjoy today's episode. Don and Gina, I am so excited to have you as guest for My Sentiments Exactly podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for inviting us. And
yes, we're glad to be here.
Absolutely. So today we're talking about your experience and journey raising children with OCD and anxiety disorders. So thank you so much again for joining me and being willing to advocate and share your story. I'm hoping that other parents and even children that have experienced these similar issues that maybe are older now, that they can gather something from this episode. So thank you again. And I'll give you the opportunity to share your story, but we're going to start out with a conversation starter.
Okay.
So it'll be a random question and you will answer it. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is interesting. Do you find more fulfillment in building a legacy or leaving a legacy? Why?
That's gotta think about that.
I mean, I think for myself, I feel like the leaving it, because I've been thinking a lot about, what we're leaving for our kids in the world alone, let alone what we're leaving them. And so for me, I want to have a legacy that's better than what it is now, I think, as far as the world or myself. But
yeah, I'm just thinking about, what we're doing right now, hopefully is building a legacy of teaching parents new ways of communicating, to improve dynamics in families, to deal with anxiety issues. So I guess in order to leave a legacy, don't you need to build it?
That's a chicken or egg kind of question, I think, in a way.
Yeah. When I actually was coming up with that question, I was thinking, along the lines of, it's really a fine line. But some people, when they think of legacy, is so far out that it's not anything really active that they're thinking about from day to day. Right. So really more so, is it something that you are actively, doing or actively thinking about as you're preparing, or is it like, later on, I'll leave a legacy, kind of that like passive type thing is the notion behind, that question.
I don't think we've, at least myself, I don't think I've thought of it as, never thought of it as a legacy. It was just what I was going to leave my kids, or what I was going to, do for ourselves, for our family and stuff, is
for sure.
I thought about it, more than legacy sounds so big. It sounds.
I know, exactly. And I think that's why sometimes it seems so far off. You don't realize the little things that you're doing every day are building that legacy. And at the end of the day, in order to leave one, you have to build one. So thank you so much for answering that. Yeah, it's an interesting. I just kind of went off of, some of the questions that I just, kind of think about. And so thanks for being open to that. That's just how my brain works. So it made it to the deck. So we're going to get right into the episode. And I want to give you the opportunity to share your journey and to raise awareness for these issues and to help parents who may be going through similar experiences. Okay. So can you just start off just by sharing your journey?
Okay.
Do you want to be the leader in that?
We have 3 children. So when our oldest was, how old was he?
When Abby?
12. Our middle child was 8, and our youngest would have been a year old. Our 8-year-old, who was a carefree, easygoing kid, kind of went with the flow, she had a sudden behavior change. She had been fearful over things, and just would have fits of rage, and just it kind of felt like it came out of nowhere.
Okay.
And when we looked back on things, we could see small signs of these, the anxiety creeping up, and the obsessive thoughts, and
the compulsions, the ritual compulsions for her, hand washing.
It started, with that.
Okay.
Showering. She would spend sometimes 2-3 hours washing hands.
Wow.
At one point, it took 4 hours to take a shower.
Wow.
Plus, we had so many nights of violence, anger, where she would just rage, and it would go off the charts. She would be screaming and yelling, running around, trying to break things, and somewhat trying to hurt some of it. Trying to kick her. She, unfortunately, the oldest of our kids was one that took a lot of abuse from her.
Okay.
But it was
like she would try to block him to go spending time with his friends, and just she'd get angry, not beating him up in any way, but just taking things out emotionally on him.
Well, she did have a few times. I can remember he used to get a little jumpy around her because she would
swing out at him.
Okay.
Sometimes she'd walk into his room while he was at his desk, and he didn't see her coming, and she'd pop him. She would pop him from the behind the head, and so he got a little bit jittery around her.
Yeah.
It was. I tend to say it was kind of our journey through hell a little bit. It was a really tough time for us, and it went on for. Well, I guess probably 2 years, at least, as far as the really, really tough stuff.
Well, no, because then we'd been seeing a therapist and things were getting better. And then at the end of her 10th year, for her 11th birthday, it got worse. Like she got so stuck and fearful that she was staying on the couch, not touching anything, not touching her dog, living in fear, using plastic utensils to eat. One time, she didn't want us touching anything. She had fears of contamination, and it went to as far as she had a big fear around smoking. And so maybe somebody smoked and they touched our fence. Well, then if we touched the fence, we were contaminated.
Gotcha.
The dog. I mean, it was just.
Well, there was a chain. I mean, it was like with library books. It was almost.
Yeah.
It may sound weird, but it was like. Well, there could have been somebody who knew somebody who lived down the street from somebody who
that touched the same book,
and all that big chain led to then we were contaminated.
Got you.
It's really an irrational fear, or it could be a rational fear taken to an irrational level, or an irrational fear, and it's just.
Well, like she had used to take the toilet paper and unravel it, and you would walk into the bathroom and you'd find this stack of toilet paper in the trash, and I at the time she wouldn't explain what it was. Later on, she told me her belief was that, and understand our bathrooms are second floor, so we have and she believed that somebody came into the bathroom through a screened locked window on the second floor, and poisoned the toilet paper. And so she'd have to unravel it, thinking she got rid of all the poison.
Yeah,
and that happened.
Wow,
quite a bit.
So we're dealing. I mean, our youngest is 1 when this first started. She's growing up in the midst of all this. We're trying to help our 12-year-old. We're homeschooling. I'd been homeschooling since the oldest was school age, trying to navigate this, and it wasn't easy. I'm an occupational.
I can't even imagine.
And so I'm aware of mental health illnesses and things. And we had a friend suggest, when it was just the overhand washing and it hadn't blown to this point, but before she was 8, who suggested to me, this could be OCD because she actually suffers from it. And when having the professional background I do, when she said that, my mind went to, that's someone who's obsessive.
It's not us.
And that's not.
Yeah.
She doesn't worry about things. She doesn't expect things neat and organized. And I
kind of
wish, looking back on it, wish we had gotten help sooner, because it took us a while. Once things were bad, it was obvious what it was, but it was a difficult journey of trying all different kinds of things and changing her diet and going to naturopathic physicians and trying all kinds of things. All the while trying to raise our kids and
survive and everything else.
Well, your life, our life kind of closed up, and I think this is, I from all the other people we've helped and worked with or known, they say the same kind of thing. When it's this bad, your life kind of folds up. You go to work if you can, you sleep if you can, you eat, and that's about the basic functions are all. Friends go away. Extracurricular activities go away. She was she was a dancer. She had
been dancing
Girl Scouts.
She was 4 years old. So she had a period of I don't know how many months where she didn't go to Girl Scouts. When it wasn't until things got really bad when she was 11, she was fearful of going to dance, and then she never went back again.
Okay.
And she said she's 19, almost 19 now, and she said recently she had stuck with dance and.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot. And speaking of just your reaction to being told it might be OCD, what were some of the misconceptions maybe that you had or since you've gone through this journey, misconceptions or stereotypes that you've just seen, whether it's just from society in general or just that maybe you encountered personally?
Well, to me, that's a big one. And now that I'm aware, I'm always advocating and educating people, because people use OCD as an adjective. They basically use it someone who needs things organized and neat, and it's not that at all.
Okay.
Hers was concerned around contamination, but there's people who suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder and has nothing to do with contamination.
Got you.
I read a story about a gentleman who was fearful he ran over someone, and so he would stop like every 5 minutes and get out of the car and check.
Wow.
I mean, the fears really can be
they're all over the place.
Different types of fears. I know early on, remember asking her therapist about support groups, and they said, well, they have a hard time creating that because most of the people in the group look at someone else's compulsions and be like, crazy, what are you doing? Even each person, with obsessive compulsive disorder, they know what they're doing is crazy. They know it doesn't make any sense, but it's their brain is telling them, in order to prevent something bad from happening, you've got to do this compulsion.
Yeah, they don't. A lot of times, I know, even with myself, you don't understand you don't know what's going on up here, and in the fact that there's thoughts just racing through and looping and looping, and the tough part for myself was understanding, and like I said, Gina's always was the good one to teach me this about compassion. When it first happened for me, I mean, the first time it happened, she had what we think is pandas, which is the sudden onset. Even though there were clues before, there was one night where it just like a light switch came on, and of course, I didn't handle that well.
I'm sure, yeah.
What do you mean you can't touch the floor? What's the problem?
Just touch it.
And then about a week or so later, I was in her room. That the first night, we kind of thought, well, she probably just didn't feel well. We didn't.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
We didn't know what it was. But about a week later, I don't know, a week or so later, and it was like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, I walked into her room and my pants leg brushed against her sheets of her bed, and she went ballistic. And she demanded that everything be cleaned or destroyed, that she that we had to get the Clorox out, and we had to clean the everything in the room, Well, 11 o'clock at night, I was like, see if there's no, and that just led to about a 4-hour process of arguing and battle. She went into the bathroom and destroyed just water and soap all over the place and yelling and screaming. It was a nightmare, So it was a matter of starting to understand that my response or our response be different. We had to approach it so differently.
You couldn't rationalize with it. You know,
Yeah.
she's in that place. It's basically you're stuck in fight or flight. Her brain is like,
Got you.
tigers are chasing me. Someone's pointing a gun to my head. I mean, they just can't think rationally. They're just in this place of total fear and panic. And, you can't try to reason with them or convince them in any way that their fear is, not rational. You really have to understand. And I know initially we didn't want to label, we don't like labels. We don't want to put a label on it. But with this, it's like, I realized, you have this disorder. This is not you. And it really helped to label it and to go to the professionals who described what it was. And other kids are dealing with this too. It's actually a pretty common disorder, despite the misunderstanding out there.
Well, and Gina helped me to kind of, in what I now call compassionate coach, is to have compassion with it. To be firm. We had to be firm, but we had to also have compassion. And she would often remind me, behind that zombie or that little, she was kind of a beast at times, that our daughter was in there, that, our loving, caring daughter was inside that. And that, we had to remember that part of it as we approached this, and not just, blast her, because it didn't work, and two, that wasn't the way we wanted to do it.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So what advice would you offer? Of course, compassion. Could you offer just, you don't have to give an exact example, but maybe just for someone who is more practical in their learning, and it's like, I need like an example of how to find that balance between being firm but also having compassion. What would you tell them?
Well, I mean, when you have a child with obsessive compulsive disorder, it's important to understand it. The OCD Foundation website gives you information and resources. We found her therapist that way. You really need someone who understands it. And the treatment for it, exposure response therapy,
ERP,
exposure response prevention. You're exposing the child to the fear in a gradual way. And they sit with it and not do the compulsion to retrain their brain that knows something terrible isn't going to happen. And the key is doing that without getting angry.
Yeah.
You have to have an outlet for yourself, go scream into a pillow and then come back.
Yeah.
It's, then they feel really defeated. They're already beating themselves up. Their self-esteem is affected, and realizing, okay, this is her brain stuck in this loop. We can present the information, we can give her the guidelines. When things got really bad, she was actually stuck in the house. Like, she couldn't sit in the car. She was too fearful to step in the car. And we had a therapist come out to the house and talked about, because it had gotten that bad, we had to lay down some guidelines, you need to follow these. And we stated it simply, and she would flare up, and we just had to find a way to keep our cool with it. And that's always been the hardest thing to do. I mean, it's a hard thing to do.
I'm sure.
Not take things personally, not to.
For sure.
Yeah. When she, I hate to say it, but she used to scream at me, "You're not my father," as I was trying to hold her back from hitting me, or, and you had to not take that personally. It's tough.
I'm sure.
If you can get into your mind that that's OCD, that's my daughter, and that's coming from the OCD side of it. It almost makes it like it's while they talk about making it the bully,
Got you.
Giving it a name, that this is something you're struggling with and dealing with. There's, some great books out there and things, in particular for kids dealing with OCD, and that, give it a name. At the time, we were really into Harry Potter.
It was Voldemort.
Voldemort is that name that works for the child. I don't think I don't think
kid friendly.
Right.
Well,
but,
in the Voldemort scenario, what I used to always tell her was, one of the and I don't want to give away, secrets of, but I think it's past the point of that. But, the whole point with Harry Potter was that he had the love of his mother that Voldemort didn't have. And so I used to tell my daughter, I said, you have love, and that is your power over this beast of OCD that doesn't have love.
Got you.
That's what's going to be your strength. That's what's going to get you through this. And I don't know. It was it seemed a little out there at the time, but I think in the reality, I think it did it got a message through to her that it's more powerful than the OCD.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those practical tips.
And
For a family,
one other thought is, when this happens, I know Gina kind of brought up the point one time. If you have cancer, if you have an illness, friends come and flock to the door with food and with help and with all. When you have a mental disorder like this, it goes the opposite.
Yeah, that's so important.
I would suggest to people that have this situation is, one is to educate friends and family about it. Two is to ask, if you need help, and find ways, I don't know what ours would have been. I mean, if nothing else, I think it would be neat if we could have got her friends to write letters to her or even a phone call to her. But they were just so, and I'm not blaming them.
Right. People like, oh, you're so busy with this, you're stressed out, we're not going to bother you.
Yeah.
In reality, they should have been like, oh, we're here for you, we're going to do things.
What
if it's too much, then tell me to back off, because you're isolated as it is. And
And I think that falls, it's not just about OCD. I think it's
with anything.
One, and the reason I call my podcast is The Invisible Wheelchair is because you don't see it.
For sure.
It's not like they have some physical aspect
where you can tell.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so you don't know. For one, if we would have taken her out, if we could have got her out, which we did, at some points we would go out.
Yeah, there was just.
You wouldn't really know it unless you could really perceive the stress in it. But other than that, and so. I think that's the other point is friends don't see, they just don't understand it. And it's a big thing to educate.
Yeah, that is I can't even stress how important that is. And it's so real. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because that was going to be my next question for family and friends who want to support, but maybe don't know how to support. And you shared, ways that they can support. And you're open to sharing more if there are. But I did want to, you kind of touched a little on some of the things maybe that that parents who deal with this situation are told. What is the appropriate thing to say to someone who is, has a child going through these things, and what is not? Because I love raising awareness for what you should say and what you should not say, what's helpful to do and show your support, and what's not.
Right.
Well, I know for fathers is don't say calm down. Don't say get over it. Don't say you're so smart. Think get past this.
Yeah.
And for family, the one person we had that was very supportive, my brother, even though he lived 600 miles away with his kids, my niece and my daughter were really close. And we set up at the time, I guess it was Skype. This has been 8 years ago. They, weekly Skype calls, and they got on because her immediate local friends. She wasn't able to go to Girl Scouts. She was really stuck. She got on there weekly with her cousin, and I had my brother kind of explain to his kids what was going on with her, and
they were very accepting,
and just knew she didn't want them asking a lot of questions, but just to help them understand when she acted in weird ways, this is why. And that was a big connection that she had for when it was really tough. That really made a difference.
Well, the other part of that, and that's part of like the goals of this is. It gave her something to achieve because she couldn't, like Gina was saying, there was a point where she got on the couch for about 6 months, I guess.
Not quite. There was a period of time where she lived on the couch.
Yeah, she couldn't touch. She couldn't touch anything. She couldn't even touch herself or us.
Yeah, her dog, her beloved dog. And she would get up to go to the bathroom. We would bring her meals. Yeah.
And to think about it as far as the parent goes, when you have your daughter standing in front of you screaming and in pain and crying, and you can't hug her and you can't say, it's okay, I'm right here. That was the heartbreaking point for me. And so with the phone calls, she couldn't touch the computer. So it was a real goal for her to want to get on with her cousin. So she would really strive to do the things she needed to do to get there.
Gotcha.
Because I think, I interviewed her on my podcast. And
Okay.
More recently,
and I asked her, what would you tell others?
Okay.
She said, have something that you're passionate about, that you want to get to be a goal for you, to help drive you to do the things you need to do. Her dog was another one. Her dog was a big one that she wanted to be able to touch and pet and hug her dog again, which she couldn't do. And so that was a driving force for her, and it was very important. That animals, to me, are just a real good therapy for this, and I think any anxiety, really.
Yeah.
Kids are enjoyed. I want to just make another comment, thinking about if your kid is showing signs, being fearful all of a sudden, especially if it's kind of a change, to seek help early on, because the sooner you address this, that's if I regret anything, it's that we didn't get help sooner. That I didn't pay attention to my friend who suffers from OCD to tune in.
Yeah.
I was pregnant when she first started having weird fears. Like, we went and got lunch at a fast food place, and she was worried it was poisoned, and she had never seen anything like that before. And then she developed some separation anxiety. She's having trouble going to sleepovers. She was young, but she had done this without any trouble before, and I thought it was because I was pregnant. And to really pay attention to those signs and to start seeking help from professionals early on, because if you can address it early, you can prevent it from getting to the severe form.
Well, the other thing is finding a professional that understands OCD, understands ERP, because it makes it just a talk therapist. And I'm not downing them; they have, but in regard to
go to a specialist,
it doesn't work as well. Somebody that understands OCD knows that a lot of times talk doesn't work as well because it begins the looping, and so it.
Yeah, I was on a it was I guess it was a Yahoo group. It was for parents of kids with OCD, and I don't know how many times that I heard about parents talking about taking their child to a psychiatrist, a therapist who really was not, familiar enough with OCD, who didn't work with it, regularly.
Gotcha.
And the therapy made things worse sometimes, because you can't talk them out of the fears that they're having. So you really need somebody who understands it, especially someone who's kind of has a specialty working with it, because
you got to understand it.
Yeah, that's so important. Thank you so much again for sharing all of this, and you answered my next question. I was going to ask, how she's doing now, which I don't know if because you have your own podcast host, you're just amazing at this, answering all the questions. But I was going to ask how she's doing. So, from what I gathered, she's doing. You said she was doing better.
Turned 19. She works with some local dog trainers.
Great.
When she volunteered with way back when she was about 10. I don't know. She was young. She works for that person locally. She does work for my sister, who's a couple hours from us.
Who has a whole dog business. So.
And so she still has fears. She still has some things she avoids. Well,
I think you have to understand that OCD is not curable. It's not a curable disease. It's a manageable disease.
Like any kind
of that's important.
It's actually, compared to some of the other mental disorders out there, you can be in a better place with it. You can be like our daughter, I think, is in a good place. She has some issues still a bit with some things, but it's very, I think, managed.
Yeah, and when we look back to where, every time she's struggling, we look back to where she was at, and it's like, okay, she got her driver's license recently. She's, engaged in things. She's got things she's working on. She's, but there was a time period when you didn't know if you'd ever get to that.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that parents that may be in situations and they think we're never going to get past this, that after listening to this episode, that they will be encouraged that, although it isn't curable, it is manageable, and there are resources out there to help you, and people that are willing to talk with you. So speaking of that, can you share what you do with Focused Healthy Family, and how people can stay connected with you?
So the business we created is for helping families. Most of the time people are coming to us with a child with a behavior issue, but we center our practice around the whole family, because you have professionals who help a child, but there's really a whole family dynamic going on.
That's so important.
And a big part of what we do is we teach a parent communication workshop. So that's something we do when we work with people one-on-one, but we also run quarterly workshops because we all need to learn to communicate better.
For sure.
Well, and it played, like I said, it played a huge role in changing how we approached our daughter, the way I communicated with her. I always say, she'd come at me with this and I'd come at, and we just end up climbing the wall together. And so if I kept myself and Gina too, kept ourselves at a calm place and communicated in a good responding way, hers didn't go up the roof.
Right. She could still be angry and flaring, but if we stayed here, we responded with that same kind of anger, it didn't help.
It was going to make things worse.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
exactly.
The communication is a big part of what we do. There's other things we do, but that's a big part of it.
Being an EFT practitioner.
Oh, well, yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's emotional freedom techniques. It's called tap. A lot of people know it as tapping.
EFT?
EFT. Yeah. And
I've seen that before.
So I've been trained in that, and we used it. We used it with my daughter. We've used it for our family. And now I went into practice for a long time doing that. And then, like I said, within the last about year and a half, I guess, Gina started working in the practice. So
as part of when we work with families and when you work with people individually, you got to deal with your own stuff if you're going to help your child. That emotional component, a lot of times parents don't realize when they're coming to us, the child's all stressed out. It's like, okay, we got to help you.
Yeah, everybody's stressed.
Please fix my child. No.
Fix everyone.
Do that. Let's look at what's going on for you too.
Yeah, that is so important.
We have important site for our business.
It's focushealthyfamily.com.
Okay, great. And are you on social media?
Yes. Under the same name.
Focus Healthy Family.
I also have the invisiblewheelchair.com, which is my podcast about OCD and anxiety and behavior issues. It's been about 3 years I've had it. And I have interviews on there with doctors, therapists. I have interviews with people that suffer with OCD. And I interviewed Gina. I interviewed my daughter. And we didn't really mention, but our second child, our youngest child also has gone through some of this. Not as in the severity of our first one, but coming from a place of when she was about one, of going through all the violence and that we went through. Yeah,
so it was kind of like, okay, we dealt with this once. We thought we were addressing it early with her, but it looked a little differently. She was a lot younger, so it was unfortunately it can be common in families. And it wasn't like we were all perfect and knew exactly what to do. We still had a struggle that we had to go through with her, and she still got a little bit more issues with it. But so it's kind of an ongoing, because it changes. It's not the kind of thing like, okay, it's all better now. It's like
kind of gets a twitch in your eye after a while. Gotta go do this again.
I'm sure, but wow, I really admire how you all just coped and adapted. And I know it wasn't easy, but even the fact that you're sharing now and using your experience, like you didn't criticize your daughter or blame her for the things that were happening. And I just think that's so commendable, because there are so many other directions that this experience could have gone in. So I really admire you two as parents. And thank you so much for being willing to share your journey and everything that you're doing with Focused Healthy Family and the Invisible Wheelchair. I think just raising awareness on this topic is so, so important. I have learned some new things through this episode that I didn't know about OCD and anxiety. issues. So thank you so much for sharing. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. I will have all of their information in the episode description so that you can take advantage of that and stay connected with them. Please share this episode. If you know someone that is experiencing this, or just with someone that may be interested in the topic, because you never know who around you, speaking of the invisible wheelchair, you never know who is dealing with any sort of mental issue. So even if this episode didn't particularly resonate with a personal experience that you have had, use this as a push to check on a loved one or a friend, or maybe someone that you have noticed a behavioral change in, or just a regular check-in. Use this as that opportunity just to check on them, just in case they're dealing with something that you can't physically see. So thank you again, Don and Gina, for sharing.
No, thank you.
Thank you for your podcast and bringing awareness to different issues. I've listened to some of your other podcasts, and it's great. Especially when it comes to mental health issues, there really needs to be more awareness and understanding. So thank you.
Thanks.
For sure. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to everyone for tuning in. Please make sure that you connect with Don and Gina on social media.
Did you enjoy this episode? If you haven't already, subscribe on your favorite listening platform and our new YouTube channel with video interviews premiering in season 3. I'd also love for you to continue the conversation with those around you. One way you can do that is by purchasing MSE Podcast's Conversation Starters Deck, available for purchase at bygracenp.com. Be sure to leave a review on one of MSE's listening platforms, share with a friend, and join the My Sentiments Exactly podcast community on social media at MSE Podcast. The podcast is available for listening on all major streaming platforms, bygracenp.com, and YouTube now. Hope to hear from you soon.